What is Nioh? Nioh is a reclamation project, a game saved from the scrap heap by a studio that was equally in need of saving. A spiritual successor to a once dead, now revived franchise, a game so inundated in systems and loot and weapons and loot, and oh hey, did I mention the loot? That most people bounce off of this game harder than a highlight ball off of Archer's face. Nioh is almost impossible to describe. I've rewritten this intro I don't even know how many times because capturing the essence of this game is so unbelievably difficult. Nioh looks like a Souls-like, plays like a character action game, but relies on an ARPG-style looter system with thousands of items and set pieces. A game oriented in so many differing directions that it ought not to make sense at all. An incoherent tapestry of conflicting game systems, design, and vision. And yet, when everything comes together, when you're seamlessly stance switching to combine combos, when you're executing flux for functionally infinite stamina, when you understand how to burst counter and stamina break your enemies to create windows for those combos, you'll see that Nioh isn't just a Souls-like, it's something else. So what is Nioh? Nioh is something distinct, something that defies categorization, a game that is equal parts Souls-like, looter, and character action, yet combines into something greater than the sum of its parts. But it's only when you stop comparing it to other games, other Souls-likes, that you'll begin to appreciate what Nioh actually is. So, something that should be obvious. Just because Nioh takes a lot of inspiration from Dark Souls doesn't mean it's just a Souls-like or that your Souls-like skills will necessarily translate. I think the biggest misconception most new players have when it comes to these games is that your experience with Malenia or the Soul of Cinder or Gwyn is going to have a meaningful impact on your ability to understand all of these new systems and gameplay mechanics. Dark Souls, fundamentally, is a game that favors patience, reactivity, and positioning. Your toolkit is limited to light and heavy attacks, maybe a parry shield if you're feeling spicy, and the game is designed accordingly. Enemies don't have attacks that you can't deal with outside of that toolkit. So your average new Nioh player coming to this game might imagine that the same rules apply, and it's easy to understand why. Nioh looks a lot like a Souls-like. It has refillable healing items, a bonfire analog, respawning enemies, an emphasis on difficult bosses, and handcrafted linear levels that often feature traps and ambushes. You're not wrong to think that it's a Souls-like, but if you try to play it like just a Souls-like, then you'll be ignoring not only powerful mechanics, but also the things that make Nioh unique. And you'll be putting yourself at a significant disadvantage. Nioh is a very difficult game, but adopting an aggressive mindset and fully utilizing all of the new tools and mechanics mitigates that difficulty in a way that makes it manageable and approachable. It's just that you have to engage with the game systems on its own terms. But that's not often what happens. Nioh's Souls-like foundation lures in players unprepared for such a drastically different type of game, and combined with the difficulty, it often creates a nightmare scenario where people decide that this is just unfair bullshit and uninstall the game, maybe make a Reddit post or two. But here's the thing. I'm not here to make fun of those people or even to say that they're wrong for getting frustrated. Nioh does a poor job of explaining itself. And it doesn't help that the language we use to describe these games tends to be overly generalized, lumping something into one category because it looks like the things around it, only to manage to strip everything distinct and unique about the game as a result of that categorization. This is unfortunately what's happened with Nioh. Nioh is both a game that is miscategorized and one that does a poor job of explaining itself, and the combination of those two often creates an impossible hurdle to overcome. Because attempting to play this game like a normal Souls-like means you miss out on burst counters and yokai shift and yokai abilities and the deep and complex skill system that lets you map out potentially dozens of different attacks across 3 stances. But More than anything, that reactive, defensive playstyle learned from other Souls-likes is the biggest problem. Nioh, more than anything else, rewards aggression. You aren't here to learn enemy attack patterns, you're here to kill the boss before it has a chance to even use those attacks, to use status effects and yokai abilities to stagger the boss into combo windows that don't end until the boss is dead. This is the core aspect of Nioh that gets lost in translation when you assume that it's just a Souls-like, because Nioh is designed to have enemies that really are just unfair. They do absurd amounts of damage and often move and require reaction times that probably aren't reasonable to ask of most gamers. But you don't have to deal with those attacks if the boss doesn't survive long enough to use them. Nioh, when it's at its best, maintains this balance between enemy difficulty and player power that allows both aspects to increase significantly and yet never have one truly overwhelm the other. And I wish I could tell you that Nioh always manages to find that balance, or that the game makes it easy to do this by yourself, but that is simply not the case. Nioh is an awkward, at times frustrating game because of how its three disparate systems fit together. Getting outscaled or underleveled for a boss and feeling like you have to gain levels, having to sort through hundreds of items to find something useful that fits your build, parsing through dozens of different abilities across all of the various weapons, and then needing to grind skill points just to use those skills in order for those weapons to be viable. Getting frustrated by all of this is understandable. For someone unfamiliar with these systems and being punished by an intensely difficult game, it can feel genuinely overwhelming and unfair. But here's what I've found. That awkwardness is temporary. Each system becomes more approachable over time. I didn't learn how to use burst counters and flux, how to stance switch to combine combos and yokai abilities all at once. Even after 900 hours in Nioh 2, I'm still learning things. Even something like yokai abilities doing more damage in yokai shift form, or how those yokai abilities actually extend yokai shift. The point is, you don't need to master everything all at once to have fun with Nioh, but what you'll probably find is that the longer you stick with it, the more you'll enjoy it. Not in spite of the complexity, but because of it. And should you make it long enough to learn to appreciate these systems, the cheesy historical fantasy, and everything else that makes Nioh unique, you might find that you've beaten the game and are asking yourself a question. What now? And the answer is New Game Plus. Because honestly, it's not that the base game playthrough is a tutorial, because I think that minimizes the nature and value of the experience of beating these games, but the base game is a sort of test, and should you pass it, the game takes the training wheels off, so to speak. Through Nioh's New Game Plus and its subsequent cycles, you get access to new, more powerful builds, new item rarities, and with the DLC content, you get even more enemy variety, remixed enemy placements, and new bosses. The New Game Plus cycles in the endgame is a sort of playground where you get to test your mastery of each weapon and your ability to craft builds and maximize each system to maintain or surpass the bosses in an almost never-ending arms race between player and enemy. But then something happened that made me start questioning myself. Questioning my knowledge and my familiarity with these games because I played Nioh 3's demo. And Nioh 3 was a lot different from what I had expected. The introduction of new concepts like samurai and ninja styles, the burst counter and yokai ability reworks, new button inputs alongside onimo and ninjutsu reworks. If Nioh 2 was more of a polished Nioh 1, then Nioh 3 is much more of a true sequel. Changing, reworking, and in some ways further complicating the gameplay systems with a seeming emphasis on dual weapon combat through the introduction of styles. Which left me with a question. I thought I knew what Nioh was, and I felt pretty confident about that. But my early struggles with Nioh 3's new systems, its new controls, they left me thinking, we may know what Nioh is right now, what Nioh 1 and Nioh 2 are. But I don't know how much we really know about Nioh 3. What true mastery of that game's combat system will look like. Because with Nioh 1 and Nioh 2, there is a clear evolution, but it's an evolution of continuity. Systems are built upon, not discarded or fundamentally reworked. Which isn't to say that Nioh 3 is completely foreign, it's still fundamentally a Nioh game, and is representative of everything unique about this series. It's just that Nioh 3 is by far the most different of these 3 games, which, honestly, I think is really exciting. It's been almost a decade since Nioh 1 released, and those of us who have played since 2017 will probably have spent at least 1,000 hours across both games, playing and replaying, diving into these game systems, and Nioh 3 is an opportunity to experience that process of discovery once more, at least a little bit. So ultimately, when I ask myself, what is Nioh? I still feel the same way. Nioh is so many different things all at the same time. A game about difficult bosses, massive piles of loot, and endless build variety, alongside a combat system that matches the depth and complexity of any character action game. But you don't get to experience everything working together until you understand these games on their own terms, something they don't make as easy as they probably should. There's a friction to Nioh. Sometimes you'll find yourself asking, why am I playing this stupid game? But if many days from now, you've spent hundreds or even thousands of hours playing Nioh, you'll understand what Nioh really is, and what wonderfully incoherent, beautiful games they can be. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.